You know those moments in life that hit you so hard, they change everything in an instant? This is one of those moments. I never thought I'd be the kind of person whose story would involve betrayal or heartbreak. But here I am, sharing something so personal, so raw, that it still feels surreal every time I think about it. It all started on a day that seemed perfectly ordinary, but it turned into a nightmare I never saw coming. I was with my driver, someone I trusted, someone who had been there for me through so many ups and downs. We were just talking, laughing even, when suddenly, the door opened, and he walked in. The moment everything changed. I won't lie, my heart stopped. I froze. The air felt thick, heavy with things left unsaid. The man standing there wasn't just anyone, he was someone I thought I could trust, someone who meant a lot to me. But that day, everything felt like it was crashing down. You know that feeling when you catch a glimpse of something you weren't supposed to see? That's what it was like, but worse. It was like stepping into a story you never wanted to be part of, a story about infidelity, betrayal, and broken trust. The thing about true infidelity stories is they aren't always what you expect. It's not just about cheating or lies. It's about the complicated emotions, the tangled relationships, and the moments where everything feels like it's falling apart. This story is about all of that, and more. It's about how someone can walk into your life and turn it upside down in seconds, leaving you questioning everything you believed to be true. What makes this even harder is the people involved. My driver wasn't just a driver, he was a friend, someone who knew parts of me no one else did. And the man who walked in? Well, that's where the real shock comes in. How could someone so close, someone I trusted with my life, suddenly become the source of such pain? You'll see, this isn't a story with easy answers. It's messy, complicated, and full of emotions that hit deep. As I share this with you, I want you to know that this story isn't about pointing fingers or casting blame. It's about real life, real people, and the unexpected ways our lives can change. It's about the moments that test our strength and force us to face hard truths. And just when you think you might understand what happened, there's always more beneath the surface: secrets, emotions, and a tension that won't let go. So, stick with me because this is just the beginning. The moment he walked in changed everything, but it's what happened next that you won't believe. I'm going to take you through every twist and turn of this true story, the part that's hard to talk about but impossible to ignore. Because sometimes, the truth is the most difficult thing to face, and the only way forward is through. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will leave you questioning trust, loyalty, and the price we pay when those are broken. This is a story of true infidelity, but more importantly, it's a story of survival, and that story starts right here. After that moment when he walked in, my mind started racing, but it wasn't just because of what I saw. It was the weight of everything I didn't understand yet, the why, the how, and what it meant for all of us. You see, the days leading up to that moment seemed so normal. Maybe too normal. I didn't notice the little signs, or maybe I chose not to see them. Sometimes, when you trust someone deeply, you block out the uncomfortable truths. My driver had been part of my daily routine for a long time. More than just driving me around, he was someone I talked to when things got tough, someone who listened without judgment. Over time, that kind of bond creates a comfort that's hard to explain. You think, why would anyone want to betray that? But sometimes people surprise you in ways you never expect. And then there was the other man, the one who walked in that day. Our relationship had always been complicated, but I never thought it would come to this. There were moments of closeness, moments when I believed things might be different. I kept telling myself that maybe, just maybe, we could work through whatever was between us. But that day, everything shifted in an instant. Looking back, I realized there were cracks in the foundation long before that moment. Little things that didn't add up, strange messages, unexplained absences. But it's easy to ignore those signs when your heart wants to believe otherwise. The tension was there, simmering beneath the surface, but I didn't know how deep it went until he walked in and I caught a glimpse of a hidden side to the story. What happened after that moment was a blur. The silence in the room felt louder than any words could be. I could see the surprise, the confusion, and maybe even guilt in their eyes. But instead of answers, I was left with more questions. How long had this been going on? Who knew? And most importantly, what was I supposed to do now? There's something about betrayal that cuts deeper when it's wrapped in secrecy and lies. It makes you question not just the people involved but yourself, your judgment, your trust, your worth. The real pain isn't just in what happened, but in the shadow it casts over everything else. I want to take you deeper into this story, to show you the moments before and after, the emotions tangled in every glance and every word left unspoken. Because this isn't just a story about infidelity, it's about trust shattered, the fight to hold on to your sense of self, and the struggle to find clarity in chaos. The story is far from over. There's more to uncover, more secrets waiting to be revealed. And as much as I wish I could tell you what happens next, I'm still piecing it together myself. So, stay with me, because what's coming next will change everything again. After that day, everything felt different, like the ground beneath me had shifted and I was struggling to keep my balance. The conflict wasn't just about who did what, it was about the tangled feelings that followed. How do you deal with someone you trusted so much, someone who was part of your everyday life, suddenly becoming part of a secret you weren't meant to know? The driver, who was supposed to be a safe presence, suddenly felt like a stranger. And the other man, who I thought I understood, was now a puzzle with missing pieces. The worst part was the silence that followed. Neither of them said much after that moment, but the tension was so thick you could almost cut it with a knife. I found myself replaying that scene in my mind over and over, searching for clues or some hidden meaning I missed. Why did he walk in at that exact time? What had been going on behind the scenes? Questions swirled in my head, each one making the situation more complicated, more painful. Then there were the small, subtle shifts around me. Friends started acting differently, some avoiding eye contact, others dropping hints that something was wrong without ever saying it outright. It was like a silent storm brewing just beneath the surface of my life. I wanted to reach out, to talk, but I was afraid of what I might hear, or worse, what I might find out. The fear of the unknown was almost worse than the reality I already knew. On top of that, there was the confusion inside me. Part of me wanted answers, to confront both of them and demand the truth. But another part just wanted to pretend none of it happened, to keep things the way they were before that moment. It's a strange place to be, torn between facing reality and holding on to the illusion of normalcy. Meanwhile, my relationship with both of them became a delicate dance of avoidance and suspicion. Every message, every glance, every missed call felt loaded with hidden meaning. I found myself watching their actions closely, trying to read between the lines, but the more I tried, the more tangled the story became. There was also this deep, aching loneliness that I hadn't expected. Betrayal can isolate you in ways you don't see coming. It makes you question who you can really trust, and sometimes, it makes you question yourself. I started to wonder if I had missed signs or ignored warnings. Could I have done something differently? The truth is, this story isn't just about infidelity, it's about trust breaking, loyalty bending, and the struggle to keep your own sense of self when everything around you feels uncertain. The pieces are scattered, and I'm still trying to figure out how they fit together. But one thing is clear, this conflict isn't over. Not yet. And the deeper I dig, the more complicated it becomes. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between us grew heavier, almost unbearable. Every time I saw my driver, I could feel the unspoken tension thickening the air, like a storm waiting to break. There were moments when I caught him staring at me, eyes full of something I couldn't quite place, regret? Guilt? Or maybe something more complicated. I wanted to ask questions, to confront him, but the fear of what I might hear kept me frozen. Meanwhile, the other man's presence lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. Our conversations became strained, filled with awkward pauses and half-truths that only made me more anxious. At home, everything felt different. Rooms that once held warmth now seemed cold and distant. The trust I'd built over time was unraveling, thread by thread, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be repaired. Friends who once offered comfort started to pull away, unsure how to navigate the messy situation. I felt more alone than ever, caught between anger, confusion, and heartbreak. One evening, I found myself sitting in the quiet, replaying the day he walked in, how their eyes met, the way time seemed to freeze. That moment haunted me, but what haunted me more was the secret I was now carrying, a secret too heavy to bear alone. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about truth, about facing what I had been avoiding for so long. Then came the texts, small hints dropped at random times, messages that seemed innocent but carried hidden meanings. I caught glimpses of conversations on his phone when he wasn't looking, but the screen was always locked before I could see anything clear. It was like chasing shadows, trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces. The tension built with every unanswered question, every lie carefully hidden beneath a smile. I started noticing changes in myself too, the sleepless nights, the anxiety that settled deep in my chest. I was on edge, waiting for the next moment when everything might come crashing down. And deep inside, I knew that moment was coming. I could feel it in the way their actions spoke louder than words, in the way my heart skipped beats whenever I thought about what might happen next. The climax of this story wasn't far away. The secrets, the lies, the hidden emotions, they were all building up to a point where something had to give. And when that breaking point arrived, everything would change forever. But until then, I was stuck in the middle of a storm, caught between fear and hope, between what was and what could never be again. Stay with me, because the most intense part of this story is just ahead. Just when I thought I had reached the edge of what I could handle, life threw another curveball that I never saw coming. The tension that had been quietly simmering suddenly exploded in a way that turned everything upside down. It wasn't just about the two people I had been focused on, the driver and the other man. There was a new player in this tangled story, someone who added a whole new layer of complexity and raised the stakes higher than ever before. It started with a message, an anonymous text that arrived late one night, when the house was silent except for the hum of the city outside. The words were simple but shocking, "You don't know the whole story." My heart raced as I read it again and again, trying to make sense of what it meant. Who was behind it? And what else was there that I hadn't seen? That message opened a door I had tried to keep closed. Suddenly, the neat little world I'd been holding on to cracked open, spilling secrets I wasn't ready for. I began digging, reaching out to friends and acquaintances, trying to find out if anyone else knew more about what was happening behind the scenes. What I discovered was far from what I expected. There were whispers of lies, not just between the three of us, but involving people I never imagined would be part of this story. People I trusted, people I called friends, suddenly seemed to have their own agendas. It became clear that this wasn't just a simple story of infidelity or betrayal, it was a web of deception and hidden motives that stretched further than I could have imagined. One night, while going through some old messages, I stumbled upon something that made my stomach drop, a conversation between the driver and someone else, full of cryptic hints and vague plans. It wasn't just about what had already happened, it was about something that was still unfolding, something I was completely unaware of. The realization hit me hard, I wasn't just a victim in this story. I was part of something much bigger, a puzzle that was still being pieced together without my knowledge. The conflict escalated in ways I hadn't thought possible. Trust, which had already been shattered, now felt like a distant memory. The driver, the other man, even some of my closest friends, all seemed to be playing roles in a game where the rules kept changing. I felt like I was drowning in uncertainty, caught between trying to hold on to what little I knew and fearing what I might uncover next. At the same time, I noticed subtle changes in their behavior. The driver became more secretive, avoiding my questions and giving vague answers. The other man, who once seemed distant, suddenly started showing signs of regret, but it was unclear whether it was genuine or just another layer of manipulation. Everyone was walking on eggshells, and I was stuck in the middle, desperate for clarity but afraid of what the truth might bring. The stakes were higher than ever. What started as a painful moment of infidelity had spiraled into a complicated battle of trust, deception, and hidden agendas. I realized that the story I thought I knew was just the surface of something far more intense and unpredictable. And as I faced this new reality, one thing was certain: whatever came next would change everything. The tension was unbearable, the mystery deeper than ever, and I had no choice but to keep going, to uncover the truth no matter where it led, even if it meant facing the hardest truth of all. The story isn't over yet. In fact, it's about to get even more complicated. Stay with me, because you won't believe what's coming next. The moment I finally decided to confront both of them felt like stepping into a storm I couldn't turn back from. I gathered every bit of courage I had and called them both to meet me at a quiet cafe, somewhere neutral, away from the walls that had witnessed all the secrets. I needed answers, no more hiding, no more silence. The tension was almost unbearable as I waited, heart pounding, every second stretching longer than the last. When they arrived, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken words. The driver looked tired, as if carrying a weight too heavy for one person. The other man avoided my gaze, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of regret, or maybe fear. I started with a simple question: why? I needed to hear it from them, to understand what had happened, how things spiraled so far out of control. The driver was the first to speak, his voice low and steady. He confessed that it had started innocently, just moments of comfort during long drives and tough days. But somewhere along the way, lines were crossed. He hadn't planned for it to go this far, and the guilt was crushing him. I saw the sincerity in his eyes, the pain of betrayal that mirrored my own. Then the other man spoke, revealing a side of the story I hadn't expected. He admitted to being caught in a web of his own mistakes, feeling trapped by decisions he couldn't undo. He apologized, not just to me, but to himself for losing sight of what really mattered. The truth spilled out: secrets, misunderstandings, and moments of weakness that led to this mess. As painful as it was, hearing their confessions was strangely freeing. The tangled web started to unravel, and for the first time, I felt like the weight was lifting. We talked through the lies and the hurt, and although forgiveness wasn't instant, there was a path forward, one built on honesty, no matter how difficult it might be. But just when I thought the worst was over, the final twist hit me like a lightning strike. The anonymous messages, the secret conversations, it wasn't just about them. It turned out someone else had been watching from the shadows, manipulating the story for their own gain. A close friend, someone I trusted deeply, had been feeding lies and playing both sides to create chaos. I was stunned. The betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined, and the story I thought I had uncovered was only part of a much bigger game. This new truth shattered the fragile peace I was beginning to build, reminding me that sometimes the hardest battles aren't the ones in front of us, but the ones we never see coming. In that moment, I realized this story wasn't just about infidelity or broken trust. It was about survival, resilience, and learning to see clearly through the fog of deception. And even though the path ahead was uncertain, I was ready to face it, with my eyes wide open, no matter what came next. This story taught me that sometimes, the biggest betrayals come not from where you expect, but from those closest to you. And that truth, as painful as it is what sets you free. After the final truth came out, I felt a strange kind of quiet settle inside me. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was something close to clarity. The betrayal from my friend, someone I never thought would twist things from the sidelines, hit deeper than I expected. It made me realize that the story wasn't just about infidelity or heartbreak. It was about control, manipulation, and how easily we can lose ourselves in the noise of other people's choices. The driver quietly stepped away from the job a few days later. He didn't say much, just left a short message saying he was sorry and that he hoped I'd find the peace I deserved. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what else to say. There are some goodbyes that don't need words. The other man and I tried to talk a few more times. We sat across from each other, not as partners, but as two people trying to make sense of what had fallen apart. He apologized again, more sincerely this time, and told me he'd be working on himself. There was no dramatic ending, no promises to get back together. Just understanding that sometimes love gets lost in the middle of the mess, and trying to force it back only brings more pain. As for the friend who stirred the pot, that relationship ended immediately. I confronted her with the evidence, and she didn't deny it. Her reason? Jealousy. She said she felt like I had everything: attention, love, trust, and she wanted to shake that. It was cruel, but it was honest. And in a way, that truth gave me closure I didn't know I needed. In the weeks that followed, I started rebuilding my space, my routine, and most importantly, my sense of self. I began spending more time alone, not in loneliness, but in reflection. I took back control of my days, started writing down my thoughts, and focused on healing. It wasn't quick, and it wasn't easy. Some mornings were heavy, some nights were silent, but slowly, I began to breathe again without feeling like I was drowning. Looking back, this whole story taught me more than I ever expected. It showed me how fragile trust can be, how quickly something real can fall apart when truth is pushed aside. But it also reminded me of my strength, the ability to stand up when everything feels like it's falling, the courage to walk away from people I once couldn't imagine life without. To anyone going through something similar, know this: you don't need all the answers right away. Sometimes the most important step is just deciding that you deserve more than secrets, lies, or half-hearted love. Real connection, real respect, those things start with honesty, and they start with you. This may be the end of my story, but for anyone watching, maybe it's the beginning of yours. Learn from the pain, grow from the truth, and never forget that walking away from what breaks you is one of the strongest things you can do.